What if your faith wasn't meant to be tested when all is calm, but when everything around you screams for you to give up? When prayer becomes an act of defiance, when silence is your only weapon, and when resistance is dangerous. Would you still maintain your inner discipline? We live in times when hiding is easier than resisting, and speaking the truth requires emotional courage, but there is a force silent, steady, invisible, that connects the great men of history. Today, we uncover the Stoic message behind prayer during persecution. Daniel 6:10. Stay until the end, because this story isn't about religion, it's about quiet courage, and it may change the way you see the world. If you seek self-mastery, clarity, and inner strength, consider subscribing to this channel. Here, every story is a mirror for your journey. Daniel was a man of integrity, a foreigner in enemy territory, respected by the king, envied by the princes, and so they plotted against him, not for his flaws, but for his virtue. Let's make his faith his own trap. They crafted a silent but deadly law. For 30 days, no one could pray to any god, only to the king. They knew Daniel wouldn't back down. He wasn't one to yield. His silence was worth more than 1,000 words. His routine was the fortress of his spirit. Daniel learned of the decree. He didn't argue. He didn't complain. He didn't confront. He simply went up to his room, opened the windows, looked toward Jerusalem, and knelt 3 times a day, as he always had. He knew he would be seen, knew he would be reported, knew the lion's den was waiting, and yet he prayed there, in that quiet room. A man stood against an empire, not with swords, but with discipline. They accused him. The king, though he admired Daniel, couldn't turn back. Daniel was thrown into the den, but there were no pleas, no cries, no despair. Faith doesn't need spectacle. Virtue doesn't need to prove anything. The next morning, the king rushed at. He called for Daniel, and from the darkness, a voice answered, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths." Daniel emerged unharmed, but something greater became clear. The strength that upholds the righteous isn't visible to the world. It's made of silent convictions. Of calm courage, of unshakable loyalty to what cannot be compromised. Daniel was a foreigner, but not an ordinary one. A man who, even in a distant land, refused to forget who he was. Living in the court of Babylon, surrounded by idols, intrigue, and power, he didn't let his surroundings corrupt him. He could have compromised, made concessions, but he chose righteousness over comfort. His presence unsettled them. His ethics were a mirror, and honest mirrors hurt the eyes of those who live by appearances. The princes and rulers feared him, not for his strength, not for his threats, but for something far more dangerous: his unshakable integrity. And since they found no fault in his conduct, they attacked the one thing he wouldn't negotiate: his faith. Let's make his devotion his trap. They drafted a law disguised as honor to the king, but laced with poison. For 30 days, no man could offer prayer to any god except to King Darius himself. Whoever disobeyed would be thrown to the lions. A law no one would dare break, except one man, a man who served principles, not convenience. They knew Daniel wouldn't back down, because his heart wasn't ruled by fear, but by what Epictetus would call the inner order of the soul. The decree was sealed, irrevocable, and the eyes of the conspiracy turned to Daniel's room. Daniel learned of the new law, knew it was a trap, knew it had all been orchestrated against him. He didn't rise against the king, didn't protest, didn't try to justify himself, didn't defend himself with words. He simply went up to his room, opened the windows toward Jerusalem, and knelt. His prayer wasn't a plea for deliverance. It was an act of steadfastness, a gesture of one who chose not to betray his beliefs, even if it cost him his life. 3 times a day, as he always had, without fanfare, without fear, without hesitation. Every movement was deliberate, every silence more powerful than speeches. There, before the open window, a kneeling man became greater than an empire. Those watching saw only the act, but couldn't grasp its depth. It wasn't rebellion, it was faithfulness. It wasn't provocation, it was conviction. And he knew his enemies were watching, knew there would be no mercy, knew there was no way out. But he didn't retreat, because the strength that sustained Daniel wasn't the hope of being saved. It was the certainty that to remain faithful, even in the face of death, is to live at peace with oneself. Night fell, and with it, the sentence. He was accused, brought before the king, charged with breaking the law, and in the face of Daniel's silence, the king, distressed, tried to save him, but it was too late. The law of the Medes and Persians couldn't be revoked. The decision was sealed. The outcome seemed inevitable. The time came. Daniel, now an old man, was led to the lion's den. He didn't resist, didn't beg, didn't accuse anyone. No words, no pleas, no attempt to escape, because the true wise man understands the dignity of a spirit at peace is worth more than 1,000 excuses. The king, anguished, said, "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." The stone was placed over the den, sealed with the royal signet. The night was long. The king didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't listen to music. His conscience was restless. But inside the den, Daniel wasn't afraid, because he wasn't alone. Was with the one who dwells in the silence of the upright. There was no scream, no cry, only a mysterious rest among beasts. And faith. At dawn, the king rushed back. With a trembling voice he called, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve faithfully, been able to deliver you from the lions and from the darkness?" A steady voice replied, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. I was unharmed, for I was found innocent before him." Daniel emerged unscathed, unshaken, without guilt. But the true victory wasn't escaping death. It was remaining whole in its presence to the world. He walked out unharmed, but in truth he had never entered, because those who carry truth in their hearts bow to terror. Daniel did not face the lions. He faced something far more dangerous, the possibility of betraying himself, and when he chose to remain faithful, he didn't just survive, he transcended. The strength that upholds the righteous is not visible to the world. It isn't found in outcomes, but in the silent decisions we make when no one is watching. The den wasn't his punishment, it was his altar. There, in the belly of fear, serene courage blossomed. Daniel didn't resist with anger. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. He resisted with steadiness, with dignity, with the calm of a man who had already chosen, long before the decree, where he stood in this world. This is the essence of Stoicism. It's not about becoming unfeeling, cold, or indifferent, but about cultivating a spirit that remains steady, even in the storm. About acting with virtue, regardless of external consequences. About staying true to what's right, even when the cost seems too high. As Epictetus would say, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Daniel didn't see the decree as a personal tragedy. He refused to be shaken by injustice. He didn't interpret the danger as an end, but as part of the journey. He understood what the Stoics always taught. The only thing truly ours is our judgment. Our control over internal responses. The world may impose circumstances, but only we decide what they mean. This is what Seneca would call peaceful courage. The noblest bravery is that which remains calm in the face of danger. Daniel's bravery wasn't in defying the law, but in refusing to abandon his essence. Because of it, his prayer wasn't an act of defiance, but an act of inner alignment. While others waited for his external reaction, Daniel remained true to his nature, like a river that flows, even surrounded by stones. And Marcus Aurelius, in his solitary writings, said, "If it's endurable, then endure it. Don't complain. Nature does not ask more of you than you can bear." Daniel didn't complain. He endured, not with passive resignation, but with an active strength, the strength of a man who knows himself, who understands that control lies within, and that peace doesn't depend on the absence of threat, but on the presence of inner clarity. This is the virtue of resistance, not the loud resistance that demands applause or rebellion, but the steady, quiet, rooted resistance, not born of pride, but of maturity, of the deep understanding that integrity is worth more than the outcome. That loyalty to conscience is in itself a victory. That Daniel was thrown into the den, but he was not defeated, because the true Stoic doesn't measure his strength by the walls around him, but by the firmness with which he stands within himself. The world may put us in dens, but it cannot touch the man who has already conquered himself. This is the lesson. This is living philosophy, and this is the freedom that doesn't depend on open doors, but on an unshakable soul. What about you? Are you living in your own invisible prison, locked not by real bars, but by others' expectations, by shame, by the fear of being misunderstood. How many times have you stayed silent, even as the truth burned inside you? How many times have you held back from acting, speaking, choosing, because you feared what others would think? Have you avoided saying what you feel, for fear of rejection, of seeming weak, of being too much? And how many times have you betrayed yourself in silence, just to keep up the appearance of peace? Who hurt you and you still haven't found the courage to forgive? Who silenced you and you let the pain become the rule, not the exception? Daniel shows us that strength isn't always found in grand gestures. Sometimes, the greatest act of courage is simply to stand firm, knowing the cost is high, knowing recognition may never come, and knowing the outcome is uncertain, but standing firm anyway, because staying true to what you believe is worth more than the approval of those who don't. Know your soul. And when no one applauds you, when no one understands why you still resist, when fear feels bigger than your strength, ask yourself, is this silence that troubles me? My training ground is today's discomfort, the sacred soil where your maturity is being built. Don't run from the den. Don't curse the darkness. The den isn't the end, it's the place where you discover who you are and what inside you can never be devoured. The wise man doesn't choose the easiest path, he honors the path set before him. Daniel didn't fight for shortcuts, he didn't scream for justice, he simply remained faithful to what he knew was right, and that was enough. If this story stirred something deep within you, consider following this channel. Here, every narrative is a reminder that the soul has a rhythm, and life has a direction. Be like Daniel. Not for the miracle, but for the strength to pray. Even in the face of the den,